While the Jungle movie was great, and it was able to answer a lot of questions that fans have been wanting to see for years, unfortunately there are a few bumps in the road. So now that we got the pros out of the way, let's get into the cons. As mentioned earlier, most critics and fans prefer the first 20 minutes of the Jungle movie because it represents on why they fell in love with the show. When Arnold and his classmates venture their way into San Lorenzo, a lot of people feel that this is where the movie becomes jarring to them. The tone changes from calm, atmospheric, dramatic, and uplifting in the familiar city of Hillwood to an action-packed, adventurous movie filled with dark, serious moments and over-the-top wackiness in San Lorenzo. While I can understand that some of the younger kids may get a little scared of the dark scenes, I personally love them. It takes place in a jungle filled with danger and unknown obstacles that kids who were born and raised in the city must endure. However, I do agree with fans' complaints that the cartoony moments get way too over the top for its own good.
The first 20 minutes of Hey Arnold the Jungle movie is definitely trying to recreate the magic of the show and reintroduce it to a new audience, but the problem with that is that wasn't the idea of the movie. The idea of the movie was to wrap up the Hey Arnold story, where Arnold would either find or not find his parents into the jungles of San Lorenzo. So in a way, I kind of feel like the movie loses a little bit of focus when it tries to go into this, though with the circumstances it finds itself in, I guess that's not too much to blame. Unfortunately, with the subject matter that we're actually dealing with here, there has to be some dark moments in this movie, and unfortunately, the Jungle movie finds itself on a TV station which is only 6 to 11 demographic. So unfortunately, in this instance, it has to play it safe. You know, I've read fan fictions where Arnold, has like violence towards him, and also has some very angsty moments as well between himself and Helga, and also the endings don't turn out all the way the best. But unfortunately, as in many cases, as I said before, this is not fan fiction, this is not fan art, this is the real deal. Unfortunately, this means that on top of actually introducing it to a new audience, you're also dealing with a bunch of hardcore supporters of Hey Arnold who have been reading fan fiction, looking at fan art, doing all sorts of things on the internet that would give people good ideas and high expectations of the Jungle movie. So in that case, I guess you could say that the Jungle movie, when putting it towards that, sometimes falls a bit flat. When the original storyboard art was released, it showed Arnold being confronted by La Sombra, him trying to feed him, even though he's trying to turn down his advances, and you can see that there's a lot of dark play in all the scenes that are in there, sort of like in the Disney cult movie The Rescuers Down Under. But at the end of the day, Craig Bartlett and his crew, his hands were tied. Unfortunately, you couldn't go into these dark elements, as he told me before. Drugs are out, sex are out, and definitely overly violent scenes were definitely out before. Most of the deaths that happen in this are sort of kind of played for comedy more than they are played for Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's blood bending in there, for crying out loud. Well, I give points for how the story turned out. Unfortunately, I have to take some of the way just because of the fact that I believe Hey Arnold the Jungle movie could have been darker and probably should have been.
First off, we have Eugene licking the dragon fruit and inflating into a giant ball since he's allergic to it. Let's compare this to an episode of Hey Arnold called Chocolate Boy, where Chocolate Boy ate the carob and had a severe rash shortly after eating it. We see Eugene throughout the movie being pushed around, bounced on, and rolling down the stairs, referencing Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Also, I definitely do agree. What the hell was up with those cartoony moments in this? It almost felt like I was watching Rick and Morty, where Rick turns into a car. That scene where Eugene just kind of turns into a giant ball and starts rolling around, it just comes out of nowhere and just doesn't really make much sense and doesn't really feel like it belongs in this world. Yes, I know we've seen all sorts of cartoony things where Helga has been smashed into walls and things like that. But don't try to tell me that what we just saw with Eugene was possible in the Hey Arnold universe. Again, it just feels really out of place.
Then, of course, there's the scene where Abner rushes back to the boarding house, telling Arnold's grandparents about Arnold and his classmates being kidnapped by La Sombra. When I first saw it, I had a bit of a giggle, especially with the Craig Bartlett cameo in the airplane. But you're expecting me to believe that a pig swam all the way to the airport, boarded an airplane in first class, and got all the way back to the boarding house all in one night? Not only that, but Grandma was able to understand everything that Abner said? Again, let's compare this to another episode of Hey Arnold, called Abner Come Home. When Abner was being led to a football factory with dog treats, he catches a scent of the trash that Arnold had piled up, and he sees a poster of him and Arnold together. Abner followed the scent, which led him back to Arnold. I've heard in recent articles that pigs are just as smart as dogs or even chimpanzees, but this is taking it way too far. I think it would have been a bit clever if Abner was with Arnold, Gerald, and Helga looking for the village. In the journal, we saw that Abner originally came from there when the Green-Eyed People gave Miles and Stella the pig as a wedding gift. But I guess they couldn't because Miles' journal and the Green-Eyed People's relic that La Sombra gave to Arnold would lose relevance in the plot. It might be a bit nitpicky, but these moments feel out of place for me. I can expect that in a wacky cartoon like Rocko's Modern Life or The Amazing World of Gumball, but not in a grounded cartoon like Hey Arnold.
I guess you could argue that Hey Arnold is at home, but I guess you could say it's a bit too at home. It's kind of like now part of the furniture and has been hanging around too long. And unfortunately, with the cartoony aspects of this, it doesn't really stand out from some of our other goofier shows that are currently on Nickelodeon at present. I really wish that Hey Arnold had actually gone into a darker element and had introduced new concepts and made itself stand out from all the other crowds. But unfortunately, it seems to be, in this case, it seems to be going with the flow. And I really wish it didn't do that.
The movie, for the most part, mainly focuses on Arnold, Gerald, Helga, and La Sombra. Each of them have their distinct moments that makes watching the Jungle Movie a great experience. Arnold's conundrum of wanting to search for his parents when he goes to San Lorenzo with his classmates, Helga wanting to confess her love to Arnold at the right moment, Gerald being a devoted and loyal friend to Arnold, and La Sombra being our villain. There's also Phoebe being the smart, calm, and resourceful girl she's always been, putting her intelligence to the test. And even the adult characters such as Mr. Simmons, Big Bob, and Arnold's grandparents are just as entertaining as always. The problem is with everyone else. I want to start with the characters that veteran voice actors Lane Torrent and Jamil Smith portrayed as. Lane and Jamil were seen in various interviews and panels alongside with the main cast of the movie. Since they were the original Arnold and Gerald respectively, you would think that they would get a few lines or some importance to the plot with their new characters. But
I want to introduce my crew. This is Paolo, Steve, and Che.
Yeah, that's all they say. For the most part, they're silent. Lane's character pretending to be Olga's love interest pretty much goes nowhere. In that same Reddit interview with Craig Bartlett, apparently it was Nickelodeon's idea to bring Lane and Jamil into the movie for promotional purposes. And boy, does it show. These characters are pretty much pointless and add nothing to the story. You could have gotten them to be voiced by other voice actors and nothing would have changed. It would have been great if Lane could have been Wolfgang again, or maybe Jamil could have played as Jamio, dropping Gerald off in the airport. That would have made a lot more sense casting-wise than what they eventually got. They deserved a lot better. Some of the classmates had their little moments, but were mostly frivolous. That's why I love the roof scene and the action-packed battle against La Sombra's henchmen, because they got to do something. I wanted more scenes with them. The one character I felt could have been cut from the movie was Stinky. What does he do in this movie? Pretty much nothing. So yeah, I wish there was more time with these characters.
It saddens me that we didn't really get to see much of the other characters. Like, I would have liked to have seen Rhonda kind of go for a character evolution where she decides that her high-end lifestyle and her snootiness basically isn't going to get her through this jungle, that she's going to have to basically get a lot rougher to survive. Maybe even Phoebe not having to rely too much on her technological aspects, and she's having to basically also herself also get a bit roughed up. And also Harold as well, like, you know, maybe he could have gone through something where he didn't really had to like eat all his food and things like that, and maybe he probably would have learned a lesson from that. Unfortunately, we don't see much character arc and so much character evolution through the side characters. It's really all purely through our main characters of Arnold, Gerald, Helga, and La Sombra. And so, really rightly so, because while they are the main characters of the show, it is a bit of a shame that we didn't really see any further evolution from that. From I remember when Craig Bartlett told me about a scene which is going to be like the end of the Return of the Jedi, where they're all celebrating in the village, and I'm really sad we never got to see that ending scene. Instead, we just basically go from a completely cut from the celebrations of the parents all waking up just straight to Arnold's bedroom. I really wish we could have had a far more in-depth experience than that, but as we can see, and as we said previously, looks like it was cut for time.
Similar to some of the characters being underdeveloped, there were some parts of the story that were a bit underdeveloped. But most of that can be accredited to the movie having to be cut in order to run an hour and 20 minutes when it was promoted to be slightly longer.
We get an episode dedicated to adding the missing moments. So you guys noticed that there was some stuff missing, huh?
We wrote probably twice as much material as appears in the film. We storyboarded about a third more than appears in the film, and then when it came back in color, we cut another 10%. So there's some deleted scenes for sure.
There's a lot of deleted stuff. It's just the way it goes, you know. You make a movie, and then there's time, and then networks and commercials, and, you know, gotta cut stuff.
The scenes that suffer the most are the last third of the movie, when Arnold, Gerald, and Helga head over to the Green-Eyed People. There's a lot of information that's being introduced in this part of the Jungle movie that need a lot more time to develop. Who are the Green-Eyed People? How are the kids and adults not aging many years after the sleeping sickness? Why didn't Eduardo contact or visit Arnold at any point in his life? What about more details on the prophecy? Why was Arnold the chosen one? How did La Sombra find out about La Corazon? There are so many questions I would have loved to know more on. If we ever do get a season 6, I hope there will be an episode dedicated to that.
I was really disappointed with the Green-Eyed People. They kind of felt like just a kind of a generic tribe of people. There was nothing that kind of made them stand out from any other tribes that we have from movies' sake. Even the Na'vi from Avatar kind of felt unique. So to me, like, also the explanation of why the kids and the adults didn't age all this time really was never explained. And also the sleeping sickness itself also didn't really have any rhyme or reason to it. It's the only way I could figure it out is that as the kids got older and became adults, so they themselves succumbed to the sleeping sickness and they themselves fell asleep. So I guess it doesn't really affect kids. So, but I really need to be privy to the genetics of that. I really don't understand. Also, like, I wanted to know a bit more about the Green Eyes themselves. Like, you know, what is their history? How long have they actually been in San Lorenzo for? Were they ever descendants from any other civilizations and they broke away or something like that? Who knows? I always kind of felt like I wanted them to be kind of like the protectors of some kind of like, you know, sacred god object, which obviously would be the La Corazon, at least in my telling of the Jungle movie. But to me, here, they just kind of like people who are just kind of like around, and they don't really have any kind of like unique access to them, except for the fact that all their adults are asleep and the whole thing's just ran by kids. Even then, they couldn't really play too much to that, and I guess they didn't have enough time to do it. Also, there was no explanation of why Arnold was the chosen one, and if anything, Helga, people argue, should be the chosen one, as she was the one who planted the locket in order to wake up all the Green-Eyed People. So, in a way, you could say that Arnold was kind of thrown to the side in a little bit in that sense, but at the end of the day, I guess you could say that they just didn't have enough time to tell it, and I think that's something that's going to be a theme that we're going to go through during our cons.
Thing I have to mention that was really rushed was Helga's attempt of confessing her love to Arnold at the boat. After Helga's confession, the boat was being attacked by river pirates. Arnold left Helga to try to locate Eduardo for help. Feeling heartbroken, she ripped up Arnold's picture and threw her locket at the river. Although I do give credit for this scene for two reasons. When Helga was talking to Arnold, there was no clear danger at that point, and it wasn't as rushed and awkward as that roof scene from Hey Arnold the movie. I'm sorry if I brought it up again, but I really hate that scene. For the second time, Helga confessed at the wrong place at the wrong time. I feel really sorry for her.
I can understand that some people have some bit of raw feelings about the way Helga kind of confessed to Arnold that she was in love with him, but I guess it's because we've kind of been spoiled with fan fictions and fan art of how the thing would take place. I mean, if you just look at it all, like, it really over-romanticizes it. It really doesn't kind of play too much to kind of like what Hey Arnold really was all about. And so, I guess now that we can see officially that this is going to be canon, to be honest with you, I think that's good enough for me. But for those fans who felt like it could have been played up more, I definitely understand.
When Hey Arnold debuted in 1996, there were only a handful of times when technology played a big role in the series. Sometimes Arnold would be using his computer, or the kids would be watching TV that is in widescreen, but the biggest would have to be with Big Bob since he sold beepers and pagers. For those of you who are 18 and younger wondering, what's a beeper? Let me explain. A beeper is a wireless telecommunications device that displays text or voice messages. Recently, it was shown in the Avengers Infinity War, where Nick Fury was using a beeper to contact something during the post-credits. I'm not going to spoil who he contacted. By the early 90s, over 64 million people owned a beeper or a pager. Nowadays, only 2 million people use them. It's funny because in one of the original endings of the Jungle movie, Big Bop's beepers would have been in business again because a bunch of hipsters were purchasing beepers. That's pretty much the only thing that dates Hey Arnold when it comes to technology. Other than that, the show is pretty much timeless. So when the Jungle movie premiered, we see Rhonda with a modern cell phone, Gerald with a modern laptop, and Rhonda asking La Sombra on whether his headquarters had Wi-Fi. If we were to find out how much time had passed between Hey Arnold and the Jungle movie, we can assume it's been at least a year, maybe 2 tops. If so, then that's a major jump in technology in that short amount of time. So apparently Hillwood is just as progressive as Japan when it comes to their technology. Personally, I don't think it was necessary. I understand that they probably added these modern amenities for the younger kids watching the Jungle movie, but for the people who grew up with Hey Arnold around the 90s, it's pretty off-putting. Take, for example, the Peanuts movie from 2015. They didn't add cell phones or laptops to make it more hip with the kids. They kept their old rotary phones. They didn't need to reference anything modern like Wi-Fi. It stuck to the traditional story of Charlie Brown trying to get the courage to talk to the little red-hair girl. It kept everything that Peanuts fans loved with a fresh coat of paint. But then again, there was the scene where Phoebe used Rhonda's phone parts to create a device to contact Bob's beepers, which was very important to the story. So I'll let it pass.
The technology in this movie was a little bit distracting. Keep this in mind that Hey Arnold was a show that took place in the 1990s, so you would think that it would actually take place in the 1990s as well. But I guess Nickelodeon decided that they wanted to play more to modern audiences, so I guess they had no choice but to put in things like Wi-Fi and phones and things like that. So in that case, it's a bit understandable. But in regards to making it timeless, I think they should have probably focused a bit more on that. And unfortunately, with all the technology that's currently floating around, and also the jokes that was done by Big Bob, I guess you could say that this was something that was very distracting, I think, for a lot of viewers.
I asked my Twitter and Facebook followers on which Hey Arnold episodes newcomers should watch in order to prepare themselves for the Jungle movie. The episodes that a lot of people stated were Parents' Day, The Journal, and Helga on the Couch. While those episodes required to watch the Jungle movie work in theory, I'm afraid there's a ton more to go through. One of my followers, Norbert, even suggested that in addition to the previously mentioned episodes, they should also watch the episodes that were referenced in the video that Gerald, Helga, and Phoebe put together. I watched it, and counting all the episodes that were referenced, and the amount of episodes that featured interviews from people such as Stoop Kid, Pigeon Man, Dino Spumoni, Big Patty, Rhonda, Harold, Eugene, and Curly, I've calculated that in that almost 3-minute scene, you would have to watch a minimum of 25 episodes. Don't believe me? Here are the episodes right here. Yes. Oh, but that's not all. Olga joins alongside with Arnold and his classmates to San Lorenzo, so we need to include episodes about her. Then there's Mr. Simmons, so we need to include episodes that focus on him as well. Oh, and this little funny gag where Harold and Stinky were pulling down their pants, it's not just some one-off gag that is supposed to be funny. No, it's actually a reference based off of this episode. You see where I'm going with this? In order for newcomers to get emotionally connected with the story and characters of the Jungle movie, they need to watch, for the most part, the entire series to catch up. I mentioned this many times before that if I were to choose a show that had standalone episodes or a show that had a flowing storyline, I would pick the latter every time. I love having to see how a story and character progress in every season. This is one of the many reasons why I love As Told by Ginger so much. However, I know some people who can't stand that. To them, it feels like homework, that they have to be knowledgeable about every character, every scene, and every moment of the show before they have to watch a movie based on said show. I take it that kids who didn't know anything about Hey Arnold were wondering on why they were showing this as opposed to The Loud House or Henry Danger, and switched it off until their respected show was airing. So yeah, despite the attempts of trying to add in modern elements to connect to today's kids, Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie were for the adults who grew up with the show. There's nothing wrong with that at all, especially since this was something fans had been fighting for over a decade. But since it aired on Nickelodeon and not on Nixplat, where the show was being marathoned and the first movie aired prior to its release, I can see why it may have not resonated with some of the kids who saw it.
I think for a lot of Hey Arnold fans, I think it was a bit disappointing to see that Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie was trying to be used as a vehicle to try and introduce Hey Arnold back to a new audience. But at the end of the day, it was introduced to a 6 to 11 demographic, and many people have probably never heard or probably never watched Hey Arnold, even though they've probably been hardcore Nickelodeon fans for quite some time. But it was necessary to add those elements in, because without that, a lot of people will probably not have got the movie the minute they started watching and probably would have tuned out in the first 5 minutes. It's kind of like starting off watching The Simpsons by watching the Simpsons movie. You don't really get the jokes that are in this, and the only reason why it resonates a lot with audiences is because it's been on the air since 1988. Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie unfortunately doesn't have that luxury, and unfortunately it kind of suffers as a result. Well, I know we've pointed out a lot of disappointments in this movie. Keep in mind, we actually did this. It took 14 years for the Hey Arnold fans to finally get this on the air, and to this day, it still gets a couple of reruns now again, and a lot of people now are watching it for the first time on DVD. It's an astounding achievement for all of us. For a company that wasn't listening to us for a very long time to all of a sudden start paying attention to its fans, and finally give Craig Ballard another break at giving Hey Arnold another chance. And the potential of Season 6 to even become a reality. It's an astounding achievement for all of us, and an astounding achievement for the crew, and we definitely should pat ourselves on the back for it.
What can we do? Sombra one, don't you give up now. Your blind optimism is one of your most annoying.
Now that we went over the pros and cons of the Jungle Movie, we still have one tiny little wrinkle to iron out. A lot of people have been requesting the Jungle Movie. So tune in next time as we conclude this 3-part video discussing about Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie's air dates internationally, the fight to get a Season 6, the many crushing defeats of not happening, and the possibility that it may happen.